Ladies and gentlemen, this is the result of a journey to Kuwait by a group of Italian friends from journalism and television. It is the documentary you will shortly see, a living image of what they saw.
Ezio Zefferi presents Kuwait Miracle. Journalist Ugaleb Buriki. Photography Mario Dolso. Assistant Director Francesca Mulo. Cutting Giuseppe Bagdichian. Director Ezio Zefferi. Water, water. Where is the water to make the desert fertile? The lack of water has always been the dominating theme of poets from this land. Voices expressing the sentiments of the desert man. Kuwait has constructed its adventuristic monuments to water, huge, elegant tanks which extend their umbrellas over the thirsty land. There are also those who say in Kuwait, the first person to discover a water well in Kuwait will become the most powerful man. Which is funny enough considering that the country has the world's third most oil wells. Seen from above, the capital offers a geometric panorama of very modern streets, traversed incessantly by hundreds and thousands of cars. 500,000 cars for a little more than 700,000 inhabitants. Without doubt, the highest ratio in the world. The traffic moves quickly and in good order, thanks to extremely rational rules which govern the birth and development of the whole country. How much does it cost to have the best city planner of the moment? And Kuwait, thanks to oil, engages the world's best architects looking ahead towards the year 2000. On the Kuwait coat of arms, a boat like this stands out. An old felucca with long planking, which only now has been, let us say, contaminated by an engine. The symbol of the trading tradition of this small people of the Arabian Gulf. Kuwait was a port, a trading center, from which the caravans left for the interior, towards Arabia, which, immense, stretches back behind Kuwait. Even today, trade in the old port survives. As 100 years ago salt was brought, goods are brought from the other side of the Gulf, and aromatic herbs from Iraq and Persia. But every day that passes, something is lost under the pressure of new techniques and new means of communication. Something is also changing in the panorama. The vegetation, for example, lines of trees, experimental fields, gardens. With a patience which borders on mania, one tries to make a desert fertile. This is the pledge that the actual rulers have with their Bedouin ancestors, those who measured the water and dreamed of vegetation. And the water? It is that of the sea, made sweet and drinkable. 190 million cubic meters a day for population and agricultural needs. It is the world's biggest desalinization plant ever realized. Besides this one, which we can see, situated near the new commercial port, Kuwait has another 2 plants functioning, while others are under construction. Once more, one asks oneself, but all this, how much does it cost? And one can reply, what does it matter? The oil pays for it. The oil in Kuwait represents 60% of the national income and 90% of the state budget. The output is today more than 3 million barrels a day, but its potentiality is more than 5 million barrels. The government does not increase the output in order to maintain, on the one hand, the price of the crude oil, and on the other hand, to better program the national economy. In one word, Kuwait now produces enough for a balanced development policy. In the country, the biggest producers are companies like BP and Gulf. The state is about to take over a 25% interest in these 2 companies. Shell, for its part, has done sea research and has discovered important deposits. Another big company is Mobil Oil. Finally, an Arab-Japanese company is preparing to exploit the deposits discovered along the coast. It is an oil tanker of 350,000 tons. But already next year, tankers of 450,000 tons will be arriving, built by the Japanese. And on arrival, they will find other steel islands like this one already in an advanced stage of construction. Besides the traditional port of Ahmadi, over which we are flying, we are now aiming at docks like that of the steel island, both to allow the supertankers to load in full security and to effectively combat any possible water pollution. Great Britain is first among the importing countries, followed by Italy, Holland, Japan, and France. The oil boom, which seems to have affected every sector of the country, hasn't, however, touched some of the stable traditions, like the religious tradition. Even though strictly Muslim, Kuwait, however, allows everyone the fullest religious liberty. In a few years' time, even these sites will be a memory. Here we are at the pigeon market, where we find stereotyped scenes dear to commonplace tourism. But for how much longer? The development plan indeed will remove the old houses at the outskirts of the open-air market, to replace them with a huge commercial complex. That day, a year, 2 years at the most, one will buy pigeons by ordering them from a computer. And the last Bedouins, recognizable by their red patterned handkerchiefs, will all be already in the residential areas built specially for them. one of the residential areas, one of many which encircle the big city center. A series of one-family bungalows with garage, air conditioning, and as much water as needed. To be a Bedouin no more means nomad, considering the desert as home. It only means having an ancient tradition, an unforgettable past which also ensures a distinct national identity. Today, in Parliament, they are discussing the price of petrol. The government has decided to increase it, but opposition to the step is very strong. Even though in varying degrees, all are agreed that it is incomprehensible how a country like Kuwait, among the biggest oil producers in the world, can sacrifice its own citizens by increasing the price of petrol. This is an example of the democratic life of the country. Even though political parties don't exist, at least as we know them, the deputies are elected by universal suffrage and mirror the different classes and ideologies of the country, from conservatism to those more advanced. It is, without doubt, a democratic experience unique in the Arab world.
يكون هنالك شعور عام لدى المواطنين اتجاه ما يمس حياتهم المباشرة اليومية ودخلهم.
Abdullah al-Nibari, opposition deputy of the left. We saw him energetically intervene on behalf of his party in the debate. Do you consider, Mr. al-Nibari, that the government step was only of an economic nature?
من ناحية سياسية طبعا الموضوع اللي كان يناقش هذا اليوم هو موضوع زيادة أسعار البنزين في السوق المحلية من قبل شركة البترول الوطنية. ففي الشهر الثامن من هذه السنة
Mr. al-Nibari replies, the subject under discussion was of extreme political importance.
هذه يعني بالنسبة للمواطنين تعتبر زيادة كبيرة حوالي 33%. وأيضا
In the month of August 1972, the price of petrol was already increased from 15 to 20 piastre a litre. This increase is considerable enough for the public, also because it came at a moment in which there was discontent due to a general increase in prices. A new increase is therefore unacceptable. We then asked, but what is your opinion? Our view, said Mr. al-Nibari, is that the public must not suffer the consequences of a policy of improvisation. Therefore, they must reduce the prices, which means, on the one hand, to return to the former prices, and on the other, that the government must support the national oil company in its development by reducing the profits of the foreign companies which operate in this country. There are two fundamental points. The first concerns the sale by the national company of crude oil at fair cost prices. The second concerns the supply of fuel to ships, which must be assigned to the national company, whereas up to now it has been the monopoly of the foreign companies. Mr. al-Nibari, how can we define your political position?
هذا يمثل الحقيقة بالذات هو في هذا الأمر يكاد يكون في اتفاق بين البرلمان جميع الأعضاء. لكن احنا رأينا اللي أنا بمثله يمكن
I can be considered a member of the Progressive Front, which pursues a socialist Marxist ideology of radical orientation. Abdulaziz Al-Masaid, publisher and director of the daily newspapers Ar-Rai Alam and the Daily News. The first in Arabic, the second in English. He is head of the Foreign Affairs Commission in Parliament, where we heard his intervention. Mr. Al-Masaid, is it true that yours is a government newspaper?
الواقع ان احنا بجريدتنا وبدار الرأي العام لا ندافع عن الحكومة، انما ننبه الحكومة عن الاخطاء. وحنا بالكويت نعتبر ان الصحافة
He replies, in truth, his newspaper does not defend the government, but warns it against its mistakes. Are there differences between the Kuwait governmental system and that of the other Arab states? Mr. Masaid says,
والله الواقع ان احنا ارتضينا النظام الديمقراطي، والواقع ان النظام الديمقراطي هو افضل بكثير من النظام العسكري.
We have accepted the democratic system and not that of the military, inasmuch as only the first can lead along the right road, whilst a totalitarian military regime does not lead to any positive result. As far as our democratic system among the Arab countries is concerned, we feel nearer to the Lebanon, and among the European countries, nearer to Scandinavia. Mr. Al-Masaid, there was a period when Iraq aspired to Kuwait.
والله كنا الحقيقة الكويت كلها والشعب العربي أيضا كله وقف بجانب.
All the Arab world, says Mr. Al-Masaid, was behind us and against the mad desires of General Qasem, who evidently had lost his reason if he really thought of conquering Kuwait. Naturally, all those who were out to make money were with him. Today, however, things have calmed down and there is no quarrel with Iraq. Ahmed Jarallah, director of the opposition daily newspaper Asiyasa. It is a newspaper which claims to be the spokesman for a vast section of the population. According to Western terminology, it could be classified as social democratic, also because of its bonds with Willy Brandt's party in Germany. Ahmed Jarallah says the role of our newspaper can be summed up, if you will permit a play on words, in the pledge of release. That means we want to deepen the democratic concepts in our country without provoking divisions and avoiding useless and harmful contrasts, which for a society being transformed from tribal to urban is fundamental. Our pledge, therefore, must be made in such a way so that it doesn't lend itself to misinterpretation. We then said to Mr. Jarallah, one of the problems of Kuwait is integration. There exists among you a strong minority of Iraqians, Palestinians, and Egyptians.
احنا قلنا في أكثر من فترة أن عملية تجنيس الكفاءات الغير كويتية هو عملية مربحة بالنسبة لنا ككويت، خصوصا إذا كانوا من العرب الخبراء أو من الذين أنهوا دراسات عليا.
We, Ahmed Jarallah said, have always been favorable to the integration of these people, inasmuch as for us this operation represents a gain, especially as far as technicians and scientists educated in our country are concerned. Since you call yourselves the opposition press, what class do you represent? We represent the silent majority of Kuwait, and we believe that this majority does not yet possess the necessary vitality to express itself, because political parties which give the masses the opportunity to mold themselves do not exist. This class still doubts its right to liberty of speech, so that it believes it cannot ask for its rights. Our job, therefore, through the newspaper Asiyasa, is to tell them that their word can and must be listened to by the government and the regime.
ثلاث أعلام بالوسط، علم دولة الحبيب، وعلى اليمين علم القادسية، وعلى الشمال العربي، وطبعا علم القادسية في شعار القادسية، وعلم العربي في شعار القادسية. تطلع الكرة برا الملعب اوت، رمية تمام صالح القادسية، والكرة مرفوعة على طول، وباقر عبد اللطيف الكرة براسه ويلعبها على طول. عدنان قبل ما يطلع برا الملعب يروح مع سعود محمد، مرزوق سعيد براسه على طول، وسعود بصدره شويه يهدي اللعب علشان يشوف واحد من زملائه فاضي، لكن يشترك في اللعبه علي الملي. طه بصري عفوا يسحب طه وساحب على طول بالعرض على طول محوله، تروح لطه بصري يطلع وتقرب بعتقد على شوط حلوه يا سلام.
Like every commentator the world over, this one spits out a stream of words, gets excited, and conveys his enthusiasm to those who were not able to go to the stadium. This is a secondary football field, not the chief stadium where the Kuwait national team plays. But the game we are watching is the most important game of the championship. It's a cup match.
محمد هو العسعوسي، محمد ماشي على طول، حلوه يا سلام. اوفر رفعه حلوه من محمد الحقيقي، كان المفروض على الكريم يصير على طول يشوت الكره براسه ولا بريله.
Sport is included in the 5-year plan as a fundamental means of bettering the human potential of the country. With medical assistance, which has been expanded throughout the whole country on equal grounds with state education, physical education contributes to the formation of a new generation, healthier, more prepared, more modern. The Romans, and also Muhammad, said, a healthy mind in a healthy body. After the building boom of recent years, which was mostly dedicated to the construction of residential houses, both private and state, one can now see an increase in building for industry and trade. The city center, for example, where the city appears like any other metropolis, is completely occupied by offices, banks, and shops. Only this... Even though one cannot speak about real contrasts between generations, it is also true that, at least among the women, the break exists. Tied to traditional customs, but a part of an ever-modernizing country, gradually women like this one we see are yielding their place to the new generations. Here we are at the university. Built in 1966, it is today the biggest in the Arabian Gulf countries. It welcomes students from all the nearby countries. A few years after being opened, it is already considered, paradoxically, old and out of date. The new university city is under construction and will be able to meet the demands of the next 50 years. At the moment, there exist two separate universities, one male and one female. How important do you think it is to have one university where boys and girls can live the same life in common and frequent common studies?
الطالبة الكويتية في جامعة الكويت تحاول قدر المستطاع أنها تشارك هالطالب في جميع يعني المجالات أو جميع النشاطات.
This girl student replies that
in Kuwait University, the female students try to mix with their brother students in all activities within the limits of the university and on all levels, both sporting and social. There exists a certain collaboration at study level, and many of them are already meeting with the male students to discuss the problems they will have to meet at the university. But the female student is also an active part of society, and we find her, therefore, involved in feminine associations and in political and social activities.
Therefore, you think that this separation is negative. Have you at any time proclaimed your ideas?
طبعا في هناك مشاركة من جانب الطالب وتحاول الطالبة انها يعني
Yes, the female students have tried to arrive with the male students at common interests. Therefore, the problem of the union of the two universities in one university is one of the burning issues of youthful opposition. We consider it a civil and cultural right, especially now when society is rapidly evolving. The present situation is therefore unnatural, because it is not consistent with the progress achieved in Kuwait. There cannot be a separation between male and female students in the cultural field.
The second female student does not agree with what her colleague said. She says,
It's not true that the female students want this union, nor is it true that they participate as male students in the life of the university. There is no real pledge in this sense. Therefore, one cannot say that the female student participates in the social development of the country. I think that the female student is very lazy. She should be more active, more involved. She must cast off the old traditions which she carries with her to the university. In other words, she must abandon her elite position.
what are the principal problems which worry you?
Naturally, we must solve our chief problems, which are those of the union of the two universities which exist today into one university, and above all, the problems of the study programs. It is necessary to surmount these obstacles, and everything will be solved.
Then what do you think are the solutions?
In my opinion, the chief problem is that of progress in the university, which must be transformed using other universities as a model, because Kuwait University is still very young.
Lulwa Al-Ghatani, president of the Kuwait feminist movement. She is the spokesman for the agitations of a society in rapid evolution. She teaches at the university.
العادات والتقاليد الموروثة. أما الآن بعد الانطلاقة التي انطلقها المجتمع أخذت تشق طريقها.
For the last 10 years, the Kuwait woman has made much progress, leaving behind her many remnants of a backward society full of prejudices.
المرأة المثقفة تفكر في عمل تجمع نسائي أو جمعية نسائية.
By her tenacious struggle, today the intellectual woman has formed groups to defend all women and carry forward a certain social discussion for feminine emancipation.
والاجتماعية والرياضية.
Is there by women in political life?
والله المرأة الكويتية حصلت على جميع حقوقها ما عدا الحق السياسي. وفي الوقت الحاضر يعني احنا لازلنا في دراسة الوضع وإن شاء الله في المستقبل القريب نسمع.
Women in Kuwait have conquered all rights except that of politics. We are struggling to obtain this sacred right, and perhaps soon you will hear that women have taken their place in Parliament.
And so today women don't vote.
At the moment they don't take part in the elections.
And what are you thinking of doing?
We are trying to convince the people responsible that women have reached a level of education which permits them to conduct the electoral battle, to elect and be elected, and, above all, to make their voices heard as free citizens.
What action has been taken by the feminist movement to spread its ideas and engage all women in this struggle?
من ضمن النشاط الذي تقوم فيه الجمعية هو موسم ثقافي مبني على عدد من المحاضرات والندوات وأكثر المحاضرات.
The activity of our association consists, among other things, in organizing conferences in the course of which we introduce topics and problems, like those of polygamy, divorce, marriage with foreigners, the elimination of the bridal price.
By your action, do you think you can resolve these problems?
هو اصطدام طبعا احنا كل هذه المشكلات اساسها عادات وتقاليد متأصلة في المجتمع. فالاشياء المتأصلة
These are difficult problems linked to tradition, and they are so deep-rooted that they will not disappear in a few years.
وإلى جلد وإن شاء الله.
of the sectors in which Kuwait is most engaged is education. The 5-year development plan affirms, among other things, that its first objective is to arrive at an annual population increase of 6.5%. A second objective is to develop the human potential by bettering education. Kuwait, from the first years of economic planning, has called to its schools and educational institutes the best educational specialists in the world. And it is from their suggestions that a full-time plan of education has been developed. To all children, indiscriminately from their earliest years, the state offers the most complete assistance. From the kindergarten to the university, all is free, from books to clothes, from the bus which accompanies the students to the meals for the smaller ones, or even to the very real salaries which, under the name of study grants, permit thousands of young people to qualify and take a degree. The school in Kuwait is compulsory. Therefore, at least for the new generations, one cannot speak of illiteracy. In a few years' time, therefore, the country will be, without doubt, in the van of the world in the field of state education. It should be noted, finally, that for every child, a parent receives from the state a considerable financial gift. This is to favor the policy of population increase, which, as we saw, is a very important point of the 5-year plan. This is why, at the gates of Kuwait, in an area of recent urban development, a club of ex-Bedouins, or their descendants, has been formed. On Friday, the holiday, they meet to rediscover in songs and dances the memories of times long past. You may be surprised to know that one is a bank director, another is an accountant with a big company, and the others are shopkeepers or clerks, or else doctors, lawyers, government officials. But their fathers were Bedouins, or even they themselves were born in a tent. It is something which unites them. At the end of the day, they meet to eat together. Then they go home ready to take up their everyday life again. traditional type market has survived with its many-colored stands full of vegetables, spices, and other goods. For oil research and town planning, there has been in Kuwait an enormous jump ahead in money circulation. The financial market, besides the Central State Bank, is based on a group of other commercial banks, all of great importance. The port of Kuwait, under the pressure of continuously increasing trade, has been only just adequate, so that a new port is under construction. The country, a large exporter of oil, is a foreign buyer in many sectors, from food to machinery, from cars to animals for raising, to all consumer goods. The principal suppliers are the United States, Great Britain, West Germany, and Japan. And it is Japan which has rapidly outstripped all the other countries, especially in cars and electrotechnical products. After these four countries comes Italy, followed by France and the Lebanon.